we noticed that there is some fundamental constant that it's underneath of all processes we are experiencing. So, on the surface, we have different stories, we have different traumas, we have different experiences. And when you go deeper and deeper and deeper, you're noticing that underneath all of it, there are common mechanisms for all of it. When you fix this path, when you straighten out this path, no matter what it's on the surface, it's starting to improve. And we called it inherence because we noticed that there are two parts of our I, or the self, the deeper self. And I called it inner child and inner parent.
Welcome to Linda's Corner, where we bring more hope, healing, and happiness to the world. My name is Linda Bjork, and today we're going to be talking about healing our inner child from trauma. I'm delighted to welcome Kasia Dodd. Kasia is an author. She is the founder of Inherence LLC, and she pioneered the introduction of emotional freedom techniques in Poland. You can reach Kasia at her website, and I'll include that link in the show notes. Welcome, Kasia. I'm so glad that you could join with me today.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
I am delighted for this conversation. And you are someone who just wants to make a difference in the world. And when I was checking out your website, there was this delightful story about when you were 8 years old and you already decided, this is what I'm going to be. Would you mind sharing that?
Yes. So when I was 8, I went with my father outside. We were outdoors, and it was summer, and it was really hot. And I didn't have any head protection, any hat, and so it turned out, being exposed to sun all day, I got a sunstroke. And the next day I woke up, it was vacation time, it was July, I think, and I woke up and I lost consciousness and I threw up, and they took me to the hospital. Nobody knew what was happening. So then they did the EEG and, different tests, and it turned out I had the sunstroke, meaning my brain simply boiled, kind of thing. So I stayed in the hospital for 2 weeks, and I was fascinated, by watching those doctors and nurses and everything. I was just like in heaven. Even if I was only 8 and I was separated from home. I mean, my mom visited me every day, so it helped a lot. But I was just fascinated by what I was seeing there. And so after 2 weeks, after they did all the tests and they diagnosed me and they sent me home with some meds, I remember when I was leaving with my mom, we were going through the parking lot, and I stopped my mom and I turned back, look at the building. It was a big children's hospital. And I said, Mom, one day I will come back here and I will help all those people. I meant children because, I was 8. So of course I related to my group. It was so obvious for me, that's what I want to do. At the beginning, I thought I want to be a doctor because at 8, that's all I knew: doctors and hospitals and nurses. But then, when I went to school, in high school, I was preparing myself to go to the medical school. But then it changed, so I decided at some point that I think that all those emotional and mental processes and how people operate on that level is much more interesting to me than the body, than fixing the body like doctors do. So that's how it happened. But I was really clear at that moment that yes, that's my path.
I'm going to be a healer. And it was just like obvious, this is what I'm going to do.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I love how you talked about how we have doctors who help us. And I love that. And I appreciate them so much. And I also love that there's more than one way to do things. And I know that you understand, and hopefully many of our listeners do, that our emotions are very much connected with our physical health. In fact, according to the CDC, over 90% of our physical ailments that we go to the doctor for have an emotional basis. And so when we recognize that when we help one, we're helping both. And so I love that there's more than one way to do things. We want to help people. We want to heal people. We appreciate doctors. Oh, so necessary. And there are other things that we can also do that can help us physically, mentally, and emotionally. And seems the path that you have gone to is through the emotional freedom technique. Is that correct?
Yes, yes. That I eventually I ended up in the psychology school doing my master's degree in Poland. And after 3 years of studying psychology, I like it and I didn't like it in a way that, I want to be a therapist. And what they were proposing for me, to do as a therapist, I couldn't feel it. I didn't like it. I was, no, it's not it. I just can't find myself in those techniques or those methods those systems they offering me here. So I left school after 3 years, and it was in Poland, and then I went to the US for different reasons. And then when I decided to just stay in the US and just live here and forget about the school. But then, I started having some serious experiences. For now, I can call it mystical experiences or spiritual experiences, some profound openings. I didn't know what was going on to me. I mean, it felt really good, a little bit terrifying, but a little bit good. So I said, okay, I want to understand what's going on. So I decided to go to School of Theology, and it was in Chicago. So I went, and it was a very, very transformative time for me because I was exploring, the other part of the human being, not just the mental, but the spiritual too. And when I was at school, I wanted to make a little bit more money than what I was making at that time. Being a student, you know how it is. So I started exploring some websites. Maybe I thought maybe I could find some book advising how to attract more money, and from place to place to place on the website. Ended up on the website that showed something like emotional freedom techniques. It looked silly to me at the beginning, because you were just tapping your face and your head, and so how can it help me? But when I did that, I felt something. The tears were pouring down my face, and it was involuntary completely. It's like, oh my gosh, there's something interesting here. So I started exploring EFT and learning EFT, and when I went deep enough into it, I thought, man, this is something that I could use working with people because I really see it's working. It's really doing something. It's making a difference in how people feel. So then I thought, okay, now I can go back to Poland, finish my school. So I have the official diploma, that I am a psychologist and a therapist. And then in my private practice, I can use whatever method I want or I choose to. So that's what I did. I went back to Poland and got my degree and came back to US and started doing EFT with people. And this is the technique that I mainly use with clients. I used it on myself a lot at the beginning, but then I started digging deeper and deeper and deeper, and kind of took my own road, in discovering how certain things underneath work. And that's how the inherence was born, if I can say that.
Wonderful. Will you explain
Mhm.
inherence some more? What is that? I know
Well,
that's your LLC, but I don't know what you mean by that.
I mean, the word inherence is it's an ancient word, and it means there are parts that cannot exist without each other. There are separate parts, but they are whole only when they exist together. If you separate those two parts, they are just separate parts. They are not whole. Only when you connect them, when they are together, they form some whole that it's functional. So 7 or 8 years ago, I met this. I mean, she's my best friend now. She's in Poland, and she's a therapist, who has some serious gifts. So when we combined our forces, we started exploring when you kind of go in and you start seeing, things through your consciousness, start seeing things that are behind the scenes. We met regularly, once a week, sometimes twice a week. and working and diving in and trying to understand and see how it works and translate it into human behavior or human problems that we have, on many different levels. And from this work, um, we had so many, single different pieces, and suddenly one picture of it came together, and we called it inherence because we noticed that there is some fundamental constant that it's underneath of all processes we are experiencing. So, on the surface, we have different stories, we have different traumas, we have different experiences, and it's like countless amount of those differences. But when you go deeper and deeper and deeper, you're noticing that underneath all of it, there are common mechanisms for all of it. So we finally saw kind of like a path underneath, path of energy flowing. When you fix this path, when you straighten out this path, no matter what it's on the surface, it's starting to improve. And we called it inherence because we noticed that there are two parts of our I, or the self, the deeper self, and I called it inner child and inner parent. Those are two components, fundamental. And we can call it different names too, but for the human sake, we call it child and parent because we understand those terms, but we can call it different names. So
wow. Okay.
Mhm.
So let me walk back through this path of how you're getting to your path. And that is in deeper studying. What is working for me? What feels right to me? What feels like it's making a difference? And you've gone through some different options. It's like, first, I'm going to be a medical doctor. That makes sense. But I'm interested in the mind. So let me study psychology. And there's still something that's not quite complete here. So I'm going to study some theology. Maybe that's where my picture is missing. And now I need to learn about this weird EFT thing, which if those listeners aren't listening, look up a YouTube video, it will help. But it's a series of tapping on points that are like meridians in your body. And it seems to be a connection between basically our subconscious. We're able to access that and connecting with our body. And it has amazing results that are almost confusing in their efficiency and how they work. Because when we say why, the answer is, I don't know. I just did it and it made a difference. So you have all these different components. And then you met a friend and you said, okay, let's pull these things together. And you're noticing that even though our stories can be very, very different, our experiences can be very, very different. We have this surface, what we see. But when we go deeper and underneath, it's almost like there's a path that's going along. And when we can straighten out this path that's kind of hidden inside, then no matter what that experience and those stories were, it seems to straighten out when we can get this underlying structure taken care of. And you have described it as an inner child and an inner parent. So I would love to hear your explanation of what is my inner child and what is my inner parent. And then hopefully we'll have some time to say, okay, I'm on this path that might be all crooked. How do I get them aligned so that I can get all of me in a place of harmony, of peace, of feeling okay?
Yes, you summarized it perfectly. So how I see the inner child and inner parent, those are two components of the same structure called the deeper self. And inner child and inner parent are totally different in their function and in their characteristics, but one cannot exist without each other. Only when they are two, when they both are combined into one and they function as one, then we are whole, we feel harmonious, with the love is flowing inside and outside, and we are always positive and always hopeful, and so it's like almost like a bliss. And what I noticed that those two parts of the structure are not aligned, and you use that word, they're not aligned, meaning the inner child is the essence, the joy of life, the enthusiasm, the openness to everything, to explore. Like a little kid, they want everything. They are happy about everything. Everything is new and fresh and always so exciting. That's the essence, like a center. The inner parent is like a circle around the center. This is what we call boundary. This is what we call protector, intellect, the one that can discern, the one that doesn't feel but understands and sees from a distance. That's what we practice when we do the mindfulness, being mindful. It means you're training your inner parent. And like, to me, the main purpose of the boundary, which is the inner parent, is to take care of the inner child, because it cannot exist without the protection and care of the inner parent. And so the problem is when those two parts of the structure are not aligned, meaning that the child is sitting inside, the inner child, the essence, is sitting inside, wanting to live and play with life, but there is no parent who will create kind of like a area for the child to play. So it doesn't know how to play in this system that we have here. And in the inherence process, you literally work with the inner parent, and the inner parent always need to be turned inside, meaning turned face to the child, the inner child, the essence, to see the needs, to see the potential, to see what the child is, and help the child to exist in the world in some kind of form. When the parent is not turned the right way, so it's turning its back to the child, let's call it metaphorically, then that's the single thing, it's the source of every single, in my opinion, every single emotional problem that we have in humanity. It's just the turn. You turn inside and you watch the center, the thing that make you, your true potential, your everything you brought to this world. The structure, when it's not embracing the inner parent, when it's not embracing this core of who you are, the inner child, we called it, then you're in trouble, and you're unaware. You want others to fix you. You want lean on others. You blame others. You're a victim or you're a perpetrator. All things are coming from this misalignment of those two structures. So then in the inherence process, what we do, we turn the inner parent structure back so it looks inside, and we release all the attachments that keep the inner parent turned back to the child. Now, the inner parent structure, when it's being developed while we growing in the brain, this is the frontal lobe. So the inner parent structure is being built while we are growing. And the inner parent structure contains the reflection of the external world. So if you have parents, or if you live in circumstances or culture that is not safe, that doesn't respect you, or you criticize all the time, or you neglect it, or you live in a dangerous environment, that's what the inner parent structure learns, and that's what it projects on the inner child later. So my theory is that there's absolutely nothing wrong with the inner child. It's perfect, always, from birth to death. It has no problems. It has no trauma. It's always ready to play with life. It's pure essence. It's untouchable. The problem is with the inner parent structure, because it absorbed all the negative beliefs about whatever, the world, life, self, and everything. And it's not filtering the essence to the world properly, because it has wrong beliefs about what life is. It's not pure filter. So when we work with, with the inner deeper self, we work with the inner parent structure to release all the wrong beliefs about the self, about the inner child, about the world, about the life. And there are generational traumas also written there because, we come with those to this world too. And once the inner parent is kind of fixed, suddenly there's no problem because the child is always ready to play with life. It always wants to play. It's always happy. It's like, imagine, a regular child, a 5-year-old, for example, when it's alone or scared or it's in distress. But the moment mom comes, the kid is happy again and wants to play with life again. So the problem of the child is the absence of the parent, not the child itself. So, those inner structures, when we look at it, it's the same happening, that the child is always waiting for the parent to show up and organize, space properly so the child can play. When the parent is not present, then the essence is doing wild things because it doesn't know how to play, because it's not meant to regulate life. The inner parent is to do that. So the moment, when some wrong belief from the inner parent structure is released, and that part of the inner parent suddenly sees the child is immediately happy and ready to play. There is no trauma in the inner child, in my opinion, and from what we see. I think, there's a lot of systems and methods to heal the inner child, but why are we not talking about inner parent, because just by default, when you think about it, when we say word child, it assumes that there is a parent. Those two cannot exist with each other. If an adult person doesn't have a child, it cannot be called parent. If it's called parent, it means it has a child. And when the little human is as a child, it must have a parent. It doesn't have to be the birth parent. It has to be just some kind of adult caretaker. But those two they cannot exist with each other. So we focus so much on the inner child and how wounded it is, and we have to heal it and everything. But we don't think about the parent, that actually what we see in the inner child as a trauma, it's actually the projection from the inner parent on the child. So the inner parent structure is seeing this inner child as a poor little thing that needs healing, and this essence is sitting there waiting for the parent to wake up and says, hey, and see, hey, I'm ready to play with life. So, when we approach the therapy this way, it's a totally different perspective.
That is interesting. And as I'm listening, because we use often the same words to mean a different idea. Mm-hmm. So when you talk about healing inner child, my first thought, my go-to is there's been a trauma, I am wounded yes. at that age, and that age needs to be helped. And yes. then when you're talking about this inner child is perfect, it's whole, and I'm trying to be able to understand the concept and where you're coming from and how you have framed this inner conflict, and so that I can be able to apply it, if that makes sense. So let me try to go back and explain, and if where I'm wrong, then you can help correct me.
Yes.
So within me, I have an inner child, and my inner child is about freedom and joy. And I can see a mental picture of just little kids and how they run and play, and they're filled with joy, and it is good. Now, my inner parent is the part of me that is helping to what I could be doing and should be doing is creating a safe environment for this child to play. And you described it as an inner circle and an outer circle. So if I am a good parent, then I am going to love this child, take care of this child. The child wants to play. I am going to create a safe place for the child to play. But if I'm not a very good parent, I don't know how to do it. I don't know what I'm doing. What I get is I am supposed to create a circle. Supposed to, and I'm going to use that word.
Yes.
As a parent, I'm trying to figure out, what am I supposed to do? What is life? What are the rules? What are the expectations? What are they? And as my parent, if I have some ideas about, well, actually, the world isn't safe. There is no safe place for you to play. In fact, you're not supposed to be playing at all. Get to work. And if I change and don't create that safe place for the inner child, if instead I'm trying to impose restrictions on this inner child rather than creating the safe place, then the inner child becomes stifled. Now, in addition to my responsibility with my inner parent of creating this safe space, is it is also a parent's responsibility to not only protect, but also to teach and to nourish and to nurture.
Yes.
And often we forget that we play both roles.
Yes.
And so it is my responsibility to save and nurture and protect
Yes.
this inner child. And so if I don't accept that responsibility, and if I try to give it to someone else, then I'm going to blame, I'm going to victimize, I'm going to do things. There's a quote I love, and I know I'm not going to get it exactly right, but it's that, as children, and especially if we're abused, as abused children, we wanted someone to save us. We did not understand that it would be ourselves as adults. So it is our responsibility to go back and to heal that inner child, to relearn. I don't know. So am I close on how that inner
Yes.
is going?
Yes, you are very close, but I would add one thing
Yes,
to
please.
make the picture clearer. When we are children, physical children, we don't have the inner parent structure yet. It's tiny and it's developing and it's absorbing the beliefs that convictions and beliefs from the outside world. So, for example, when you were a kid and you have a very critical mother, oh, you never achieve anything. Oh, all that stuff we know. So the developing inner parent structure will have this belief about this inner child. So then, for example, you're an adult and you want to do something fun, some fun, meaningful or whatever in life, and you have this voice, right? No, you're not good enough, you won't do this. That's the old words of mother written in your inner parent. So the external inner parent kind of moves inside your system in a form of beliefs written in the inner parent structure. So the moment you release this, the inner child is ready to do what it wants to do. And so we are not healing the inner child itself. We are healing the not well developed inner parent structure. So the structure becomes a better parent for the child because the child is always ready. It just wants the parents to be healthy. Imagine, for example, when let's say when you were 6 and you came to this world with a musical talent and you see piano or guitar or whatever instrument and you are just shaking because you want to play so much. But as a 6-year-old, you have no idea how to do it. You can't go to store and buy an instrument because you don't know how. You won't find a teacher to give you lessons or go to music school. You need a parent to provide, all this for the child to be able to finally, realize the potential, the musical talent. So there is the potential and the fire, and then there is the form that helps to shape up in a proper way the fire, and also kind of mediate between the inner fire and the external circumstances. We have to know where to go, how to call. You have to have money to pay for lessons and all that. That's what parents do. So the same happened then later, when we talk about the inner parent and inner child, the inner child always wants to play, but the inner parent must be the interface between the inner world and the outer world. And on one hand, recognize the needs of the inner child, and on the other hand, act accordingly in the external world to be able to convey it, the inner fire, to convey it in a proper way that it's formed and accepted and can work in the external world. So, and for some reason, the focus on the traumatized, unhappy inner child was so, so heavy that we forgot or didn't notice that there's this inner parent structure. And that's what needs really attention, not the child. Child is fine, I'm telling you. Once you see it, when those filters from the inner parent finally fall off and you see the inner child energy and the fire, I personally, I am so little at that moment when I see it because it's so powerful. It's not weak, it's not wounded. It's the inner parent that it's projecting. It's the inner parent that has wrong beliefs about the child, that it cannot see the power. It lives locked in those, oh, it's not good enough, it's wounded, it's hurting, and all that.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So from your perspective, then, when we're talking about this inner wounded child, so I'm imagining a child who's been through an abusive situation. And if you take a mental picture of this child that's just crouched and crying and needs protection, you're suggesting that it's not actually the inner child
Yes.
feels that way at all.
Yes.
It is the inner parent
Yes.
who has interpreted and
Yes.
projected this is the outcome of what
Yes.
took place.
Yes.
So it creates this image and says, this is who you are.
Yeah,
This is
exactly.
what you are,
Exactly.
rather than allowing you to be
Yes.
free. Wow.
Yes.
Okay. Boy,
One more,
that's such a different perspective. Yes, please.
totally. One more, just adding what you just said, the inner child, the energy, the essence, it doesn't have memory. It's always in here and now. So it doesn't have those mental pictures of what happened. The essence, it's always in here and now. It doesn't have memory. It's connected always to here and now. It's the inner parent that has those frozen images of what happened, and it's holding in the structure of memory. It's not the inner child, it's the inner parent that's holding the memories. It needs to be released from the memory of the inner parent, how it happened, because the child doesn't want to hear it anymore. It just wants to play again.
So, Kasia, let's put me in this situation. So I am somebody, and I've come and I've talked to you, and I have this wounded, I thought it was a wounded inner child, but you're saying it's a wounded inner parent. And I'm thinking, oh, well, okay, but part of me, whatever part you want to name, you want to give it, needs to heal. So now would you go to EFT, or what would you do to help me heal that inner parent's projection onto the inner child? So what do I do?
Yes, I do both. I mean, personally, I do both EFT and the inherence process, because EFT is so simple. You feel the emotion. If you have a memory of, where it comes from, you address it to, and you do the EFT tapping, and you feel in the moment how the emotion, releases, and you feel lighter and brighter and happier. So that's the very simple thing we can do, and you can learn EFT on your own. There's so many materials, free materials right now on the website, on internet, that you can do it on your own, or you can work with a therapist or EFT practitioner who will guide you through the process. But if you wanna work with the setting of inner child and inner parent when you come to work with me, then I do the inherence process. And the inherence process is we also start, from some concrete life circumstances that you deal with and are hard and problematic. It could be a situation, it could be a person, whatever the beginning story is. We take this as a kind of like a gate, and then you go through the different steps of the process. The first one is that as an inner parent structure, you turn 180 degrees and you leave the thing behind your back, whatever it is, the person, the situation, the memory, whatever it is, you leave it behind you. So you literally turn your awareness 180 degrees. And then very interesting things start happening when you leave it behind you, because there's another set of emotions that you usually are not aware of, thinking about your problem. Another set of emotions surface, and you're surprised, about your own attachments to something you don't want, because you don't want this person to hurting your being in your life. You don't want this being in this situation. You don't want to have this toxic cord with somebody. But when you turn and you do the process, suddenly you discover that the only thing that keeps you connected to those things you don't want is your own unconscious attachment. There's no, evil energies that try to catch you or destroy you. That's how we see it on the outside, but there's always underneath our own attachment to it. And once you release the personal attachment to it, it just leaves. From this new perspective, when you look back at the initial problem, it doesn't exist. It never existed. It's in a different dimension. That's how it feels when you go through the process.
Wow. Okay. So I am a person who's struggling with my traumas, my issues, and I have an inner child who is free that I didn't know was free because I thought it was wounded. And I have my inner parent who is projecting that image of this is what happened and this is how it affected you and this is what you are because of this. And now I'm going to say, hey, inner parent, I want you to turn. I want you to turn around. I want you to face toward this inner child.
Mm-hmm.
And when you do that, you're coming at it from a different angle, literally.
Yeah, literally.
A different perspective, and recognizing that my real issue is my attachment, not only my interpretation of what took place, my understanding, my conclusions, and my attachment to that. And when I can and choose to release that, then I feel free.
Yes.
Isn't this is so different. There are elements that are similar, but it's very different from other approaches.
Mm-hmm.
So this is very interesting. This has been very enlightening. Kasia, is there anything that you want to make sure that we cover or clarify before we close today?
Well, the only thing that I could add to what you just said is that when you turn and, when you start releasing those attachments to the thing that you don't want to, there's always, on the very, very bottom of everything, there's always guilt, and guilt of leaving it. And I call, the guilt in my book misplaced responsibility. Because when you turn the wrong way, you're not responsible for yourself, for your inner child and its well-being. You're responsible for something else outside. And nothing outside is piece of your deeper true I. So you're trying to be responsible for some fake thing because you have a belief that that's what you're supposed to do because, others are more important than you, or, you have to be good girl, so you'll be accepted, whatever the beliefs are. So you're responsible for something outside, for somebody else, for how body feels or whatever it is. And this is the misplaced responsibility. So you aim your attention to something that it's not your I or your true self. And this is directly the source of guilt. Because when you turn and when you try to leave this thing, there's always will be, oh, I feel bad, oh, I cannot do it, I cannot leave this. They will reject me if I do it, or I'll be a bad person if I if I won't be responsible for that thing or person or whatever it is. And so there is really at the bottom of everything a very simple mechanism that I say it underlies everything.
And it's guilt.
Yes, the guilt meaning the misplaced responsibility. Yeah, because guilt sometimes we
Misplaced
think in terms of
responsibility.
Catholic Church or
Oh,
some, we think different things about the world
right. We
with
have to
guilt.
make sure that the meaning that we attach to
Yes,
the word is the
yeah,
same so we can converse. Okay. So
misplaced
misplaced
responsibility.
responsibility. So the one that I'm responsible for is me.
Yes,
And so
only.
turning into me is where my responsibility is. When
Yes,
I turn it out, then I
yes,
feel responsible for things that
yes.
I actually have no control over.
No, exactly. The word control is perfect because that's what I wanted to say, that you try to control things that are not under your control. And you will always fail. Always.
And we will always fail when we
Yes.
try to control things that are outside
Yes.
of us,
Exactly.
outside of our ability to control that.
Exactly. And once you connect it to the inner essence, to the inner child, and you are feeling whole inside, then you are radiate this completely unconditional love. You still do the same things for other people, but from a totally different space inside. You have a totally different motivation behind doing the same things. You're always happy. There's no expectation that you have to get something in return, or the world is unhappy because you do so much things for the world, but the world doesn't do anything for you, just uses you. That's the victim story. That comes from the misplaced responsibility.
And isn't that, oh gosh, wow, I think we could go on for a lot longer, but for
Yes, I
time's sake,
understand.
I think we're going to wrap it up for today. And if anyone is interested in learning more, I will make sure to include the links to your website so that they were able to connect with you. And Kasia, thank you so much for visiting with me today.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I had a great pleasure to talk to you.
Me too. In closing, I'd like to share a quote by Kasia Dodd. She said, "Others treat you not the way you treat them, but the way you treat yourself." Today, I invite our listeners to treat themselves with kindness, compassion, respect, and love. See you next time on Linda's Corner. Thanks for listening. Please share and subscribe to help us reach new listeners. And if you'd like to heal your life from the inside out, there is a free video series at hopeforhealingfoundation.org. Just click on the free stuff tab. I also invite you to grab a copy of one of my books, like Crushed, A Journey Through Depression, and You Got This, an action plan to calm fear, anxiety, worry, and stress. See you next time on Linda's Corner.